a company that absolutely knocked the freaking cover off the ball here, and that is Pure Storage.
If I wasn't so, exhausted, I would have gotten up and swung like a baseball swing right there. You
Yeah,
know, I would have made it rain.
yeah.
I would have
I
made it
just
rain.
I love to see people crush their earnings,
Well,
right?
I love to see, yeah, I love to see companies do well. Of course, we had a great run of that during the pandemic. And now we're starting to, have to have some of the harder conversations, which sucks. It's like if it keeps getting worse, man, we're just gonna stop covering earnings because we like to be the positive guys. It's like, oh, like, oh my God, what a disaster. But part of our job as analysts is we have to observe and analyze the market in both up and down directions, and we try to find the strengths and the goods and advise how to help companies through all these different gyrations and all this turbulence. But not a lot to advise here, just a lot of commending for Pure Storage. I mean, first of all, this is a company that's been on that kind of precipice of being in the black, and this quarter showed a pretty significant income, close to 80 million on around what was it? I'm sorry, 620 million growth in revenue. That was a huge growth year over 50% growth. Which, by the way, when you start growing at that rate, when your run rate is 2.5 billion, that's pretty impressive for a storage-focused company. Now, this is a disruptive storage-focused company, but last year they had a loss in this quarter. It's basically break even this quarter. They did like 360,000 loss on 400 million. This time they actually did an $80 million gain or profit. So that was super impressive. This is a company, by the way, that what I love about Pure is how does a storage company also become a CX company? And so somewhere in its DNA, right? And we've had Charlie Giancarlo, CEO of Pure, on our summit a few times. But somewhere in the company's DNA, it became all about CX, customer service, and net promoter score. And this thing is working for it. Basically, make our customers insanely happy in working with us, and we will keep growing. And that's what's happened here. So headwinds or no headwinds, companies are clearly spending more on storage because this is a company that, saw 50% growth in this most recent quarter, and in a quarter where, other storage providers saw growth. So it also goes to show, by the way, some of those tailwinds about infrastructure, storage, data, making data accessible. I mean, their Portworx portfolio is super interesting, right? Container-based solutions for bringing storage and memory closer to compute, doing it in a modernized environment. That was a big acquisition for the company, and that's going to be a very promising part of its story in the future. So that was another really good number for the company as well. Look, they're not as big of a portfolio as a Microsoft, so you can be kind of in this bit of a lane. But you and I, we've had these conversations with Micron, Pat, about memory. Pure is kind of a conversation here about, just how important is data and making data easily accessible, usable, using, modern technology so that when you basically need that access to that data, you can get access. Pure is really in it to be disruptive, to be easy to work with. And the customers are basically telling the story here. Customers are raising their hand and saying, we want to work with Pure. And so, I don't know that I need to, expound about this much more, but 50% growth during a sort of teetering economic moment for a company that's, relatively small in this space in terms of size, but becoming an extremely big disruptive player to a lot of those legacy names, and is going to be a company that I believe you're going to have to keep an eye on.
Good stuff, Daniel. But I want to talk about. They beat 20% on the top line, and while I know they vacillate between kind of profit and loss. I mean, the earnings surprise was 491%. Pretty impressive stuff. And here is a company that, Daniel, you talked about CX, right? And they are a software company that happens to do a little bit of hardware. And doesn't that sound familiar, like Apple-esque, right? Where the magic comes in there. And did you know, Danny, you can ride the longevity of a Pure subsystem, and you can get order of magnitude increases in performance with software upgrades. And that's the way they've done it. They built a chassis too, that if you need to replace the hardware, it's a bladed type of architecture. Interestingly enough, so what they do is they put a fast enough backplane, and they put a wide enough power range to be able to do that and actually do upgrades. And these customers actually do hardware upgrades in the middle of that chassis. They were also the first major player to do storage as a service, right? Pure as a service. Ta-da! Here we are. They were pretty much in front of.
Is that what PaaS stands for? Pure as a service?
Maybe to them it does. But yeah. By the way, the storage folks are starting to use SaaS as storage as a service, and I'm like, no, maybe SaaS. Okay, SaaS is all taken up, folks. So please don't screw this up. So I am calling it today. It's not SaaS, storage as a service. It's SaaS or pure as a service, PaaS. Oh, that's not going to work either. But anyways, and subscription services, they're also way ahead of the industry. On you saw the ARR at 29%. Subscriptions were up 35%. Anyways, this reminds me very much of our Marvell conversation that we had that we had last week. I don't know how to criticize this recent earnings. They knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it's okay. Sometimes you're trying to find a pimple, on perfect skin. And they're just it's not there. So they're going to have quarters, and we'll have to snap back and say, oh, what happened? But right now the momentum seems to be in favor, and I do think this has something to do with that transformation of buying behavior. Going back to like the HPE discussion about for Pure, there's not a big transformation because, like I said, it is mostly a service, so they're not weighing on the hardware. They're able to lean into the fact that, hey, you want a solution that you can subscribe to, OpEx, consumption based, by the way, and be really happy that you work with us because that's what we're focused on. Of course, I said that they're on this 2.5 billion trajectory, Pat. Now we'll ask them, can they keep growing like this when they're on a 10 billion and then on a 15 billion? To be seen. But
we'll see.
So far, a lot to like about it.